Hello guys. Welcome to Pika Fiction. So in this video, we will see what if Ash became the breeding master for the revived Aether Foundation and got a harem. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. The steward of life, the Alalan sun, was a familiar, heavy warmth on Ash Ketchum's shoulders. It beat down on the stretch of white sand that served as Professor Kukui's backyard, turning the turquoise water of Hauoli outskirts into a glittering expanse of diamonds. The air, thick with the scent of salt and plumeria, was split by a sharp cry. Pikachu, use quick attack, left flank. The electric mouse was a yellow blur against the sand, kicking up a rooster tail of white grains. Across the makeshift battlefield, Kukui's Incineroar, a mountain of muscle and fiery pride, pivoted on one massive foot, its movements belying its size. It met the charge not with a clumsy swipe, but with a precise, open-palmed block, catching Pikachu mid-air. Now, throat chop, Kukui roared, his voice filled with the familiar zeal of battle. Incineroar's hand glowed with a dark, crackling energy. But Ash didn't shout a counter-command. He didn't have to. There was a flicker of shared understanding, a silent beat of communication that passed between him and his oldest partner. In the split second Incineroar's muscles tensed for the strike, Pikachu's body went limp in its grasp, not in surrender, but as a feint. He dropped like a stone, sliding under the arc of the attack. Before Incineroar could recover, Pikachu was already spinning, his tail glowing with the hard light of an iron tail. It wasn't aimed at Incineroar's head or chest, a knockout blow. Instead, it swept low, a perfect, controlled arc that connected with the back of Incineroar's knee. There was a dull thump, and the massive Pokemon's leg buckled. It dropped to one knee with a grunt of surprise, off balance for just a moment. It was all the time Pikachu needed. He was already back in front of Ash, cheeks sparking, ready for the next move. Kukui let out a low whistle, a grin spreading across his face. He lowered his hand. All right, that's the match. Woo, I swear. You two get faster every time I see you. Incineroar grunted, shaking its leg before giving Pikachu a nod of respect. It lumbered over to Kukui's side, the bell of fire at its waist flaring with good-natured frustration. You didn't even give a command, Kukui noted, pulling off his sunglasses to wipe a bead of sweat from his brow. His lab coat was long gone, replaced by his usual open shirt and shorts. He just knew. Ash knelt, ruffling the fur on Pikachu's head. We've been at this a long time, Professor. We don't always need words. He felt the thrum of satisfaction from Pikachu, the simple joy of a battle well fought, the lack of any real animosity. It was a clean, sharp feeling, like a perfectly tuned instrument. It's more than that, Ash, Kukui pressed, walking closer. His gaze was analytical, the scientist peeking through the laid-back all-along attitude. That wasn't just instinct. That was strategy. You're not just battling with him, you're harmonizing. The precision on that iron tail. Just enough to disable, not to injure. That's champion-level stuff, and then some. Ash stood, a faint, almost wistful smile on his face. He was in his early 20s now. The lanky, boisterous kid who had first crashed into Alola had been weathered by years of travel and countless battles. He was leaner, taller, and carried himself with a quiet stillness that often made people underestimate him until they saw him in action. The title of World Monarch sat on his shoulders, but it felt less like a crown and more like a well-worn coat, comfortable but no longer exciting. The thrill of the climb had been everything. The view from the top was peaceful. Too peaceful. Thanks, Professor, he said, his eyes drifting out to the ocean. But it's just another battle. Kukui caught the tone. He'd known Ash for years, had seen him at his most fiery and his most determined. This quiet melancholy was new. Just another battle. The Ash I know never thought that way. What's going on in that head of yours? Before Ash could answer, a small voice yelled, Pika P. A tiny toddler with a shock of dark green hair, Kukui and Burnett's son, Lei, came toddling out of the house, chasing after a Rockruff. Lei, be careful, Professor Burnett called, following him onto the porch. She smiled warmly at Ash. Don't let your father wear you out. He's been looking forward to this spar all week. Ash's smile became genuine. It's no trouble, Professor. It's good to be back. The domestic tranquility was a balm, but it also sharpened the edges of his restlessness. He'd achieved his dream. He was, by most metrics, the strongest trainer in the world. He'd fought gods, saved reality, and collected more trophies than he knew what to do with. Yet, he found himself drawn less to the grand stadiums and roaring crowds and more to moments like this, the quiet understanding with Pikachu, the silent thrum of life from the wild Pokémon in the nearby jungles. His aura, once a sporadic, explosive power he barely understood, had matured with him. It was a constant companion now, a low hum in the back of his mind that connected him to the emotional state of the Pokémon around him. He could feel the contentment of Burnett's Munchlax napping in the shade, the playful rivalry between Lay's Rockruff and a wild Pikapek, the deep, ancient weariness of the Exeggutor on the far side of the island. It was a symphony of life, and he was beginning to find it more compelling than the roar of any crowd. As if summoned by his thoughts on a grander scale, a different kind of roar began to build in the distance. It wasn't a Pokémon. It was the high-pitched whine of powerful turbines. All heads turned towards the sky. Descending from the brilliant blue was a craft unlike any military or civilian transport Ash had ever seen. It was stark white, shaped like a manta ray, with clean, elegant lines that spoke of immense wealth and advanced technology. The iconic symbol of the Aether Foundation was emblazoned on its wing, but this was a far cry from the bulky, almost clinical vessels they had used before. This was something new, something reformed. The craft didn't land with a clumsy thud. It hovered silently a few feet above the beach, the sand barely stirring beneath it as a ramp lowered with a soft hiss. Standing at the top of the ramp was a figure that made Ash's breath catch in his throat. It was Lily. But it wasn't the timid, hesitant Lily he had said goodbye to years ago. The wide-brimmed hat and simple dress were gone, replaced by a sharply tailored white suit that was both professional and stylish. Her blonde hair, once a simple braid, was now styled in a way that was both elegant and efficient. She stood with a poise and confidence that radiated from her, her green eyes, once so full of fear and uncertainty, now clear, focused, and carrying the weight of authority. At her side was not the little Alolan Vulpix, snowy, but a fully evolved Nenettles, its 9 tails fanning out behind it with ethereal grace, its presence calm and powerful. Lily. Ash said, the name feeling strange and wonderful on his tongue. She descended the ramp, her heels making no sound on the metal. Her gaze was locked on his, a small, genuine smile softening the professional mask. Hello, Ash. It's been a long time. Kukui and Burnett looked between the two, sensing the deep history that crackled in the air. President Lily, Kukui said, recovering first and stepping forward respectfully. This is an honor. We weren't expecting you. The honor is all mine, Professor, she replied, her voice smooth and measured. She gave him and Burnett a gracious nod before her attention returned fully to Ash. I apologize for the intrusion, but my business is with him. The air was thick with unspoken words, with years of separate journeys and shared memories. He remembered the frightened girl who couldn't even touch Pokémon, and saw the powerful woman who now commanded this incredible machine, this new Aether Foundation. You're the president? Ash asked, a hint of awe in his voice. A lot has changed, she said simply. My mother is receiving long-term care. After the incident with Necrozma, the Foundation needed a new direction. One focused on healing and protection, not exploitation. I stepped in. She didn't need to elaborate. The confident set of her jaw, the way her Nenettles stood loyally by her side, the sheer presence she projected, it all spoke of a trial by fire from which she had emerged tempered and strong. I came here because I have a proposal for you, Ash, she continued, her tone shifting, becoming more direct. A role that I believe only you in the entire world can fill. May we speak privately? Ash glanced at Kukui, who gave him an encouraging nod. Go. We'll keep Lay out of trouble. Ash walked with Lily along the shoreline, the waves lapping gently at the sand. Pikachu trotted beside him, while Nenettles padded silently behind Lily. For a few moments, they just walked, the silence comfortable. You look good, Lily, Ash said finally. Really good. Confident. A faint blush touched her cheeks, a brief glimpse of the girl she used to be. It was necessary. The world doesn't listen to timid girls. It listens to strength. Something you taught me. Her eyes met his. Which is why I'm here. Ash, the new Aether Foundation's mission is twofold. First, to create true sanctuaries for endangered and mistreated Pokemon. Second, to study and preserve the deepest, most fundamental aspects of Pokemon life. We've made incredible strides in medicine, in habitat recreation, in conservation. But we've hit a wall. She stopped, turning to face him fully. The setting sun cast a golden glow around her, making her look almost statuesque. The wall is trauma, not just physical, but psychological, emotional. We have Pokemon rescued from poachers, from illegal fighting rings, from abusive trainers. Their bodies heal, but their spirits remain broken. They're aggressive, fearful, unable to connect with us or each other. Our best empaths, our most patient caretakers, we can't get through. It's like their very essence, their genetic core, has been scarred. Ash listened, his expression serious. He knew what she was talking about. He'd felt it before, that deep, ugly wound in a Pokemon's soul, like a dissonant chord in the symphony of life. He'd felt it in the Infernape he'd raised from a traumatized Chimchar. And there's another side to it, Lily went on, her voice dropping, becoming more intense. Ancient Pokemon, species on the brink of extinction. Their bloodlines are weak, their genetic diversity collapsing. We can clone them, but the clones are listless, lacking the vitality of their ancestors. Something is missing. A spark. A soul, for lack of a better word. She took a deep breath, steeling herself. Our research brought us to a single, recurring phenomenon. A power that has been documented alongside legendary events and moments of impossible connection. A power the old texts of Sinnoh call aura. Your power, Ash. Ash's posture stiffened slightly. He rarely spoke of his aura. To most, it was a mysterious fluke. To him, it was as much a part of him as his own heartbeat. We've cross-referenced reports from the battle frontier, from Kalos, from the incident with the Tree of Beginning, Lily said, her knowledge of his past startling him. What you do, it isn't just about commanding Pokemon. You connect with them. You resonate with their very being. My researchers have a term for it. Soul resonance. They believe your aura can do what science can't. They believe you can touch that scarred core and heal it. That you can awaken that missing spark in weakened bloodlines. She finally laid it on the table, her eyes pleading, yet her voice firm. I want you to lead our new sanctuary division. The public title will be Head of Special Projects and Conservation. But your real role, the one that matters, we're calling it the Breeding Master. The term landed with a thud. Breeding Master. It sounded so clinical. So detached. Ash's brow furrowed. Lily, I'm a trainer. A battler. I connect with Pokemon through shared experience, through pushing each other to be stronger. What you're describing, it sounds like you want me in a lab coat, running experiments. No, she said, stepping closer, her composure finally cracking to reveal the passion beneath. Never. This isn't about labs and test tubes. It's about you, doing what you've always done, but on a scale that could change the world. It's about you walking into an enclosure with a terrified, aggressive Pokemon and showing it that it can trust again. It's about you holding a newly hatched egg and pouring your strength, your spirit, into it, ensuring it's born strong and whole. This isn't science, Ash. It's a miracle, and you're the one who can perform it. He was torn. The grand battles, the leagues, the championships, they felt hollow now. Lily was offering him something new, a purpose that resonated with the quiet, powerful man he had become. But to leave behind the path of the trainer, the journey that had defined his entire life. I don't know, Lily, he said honestly, looking down at Pikachu, who seemed to be listening with rapt attention. It's a huge change. As if the universe itself was impatient with his hesitation, a frantic buzzing came from a device on Lily's wrist. She glanced at it, and her face went pale. Oh no. What is it? It's an emergency at Aether Paradise, she said, her voice tight with anxiety. Code red. Containment breach in the high-security rehabilitation wing. She looked at him, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and sudden, sharp opportunity. Forget my words. I need to show you. She didn't wait for his answer. She was already striding back toward her ship. We have to go. Now. The flight to Aether Paradise was a tense, high-speed journey over the open ocean. The luxurious interior of the vessel was lost on Ash as Lily stood before a large holographic display, receiving frantic reports from her staff. Status on the perimeter shields, she demanded, her voice cutting through the nervous chatter of her staff on the other end. Holding, President, but the impacts are causing micro fractures. We've never seen anything this aggressive. What about the sedatives? No effect. It's metabolizing them faster than we can administer the dose. It's like its rage is burning everything away. Lily's knuckles were white where she gripped the console. She looked at Ash, her carefully constructed composure fraying at the edges. We rescued it 2 days ago from a raid on an illegal mining operation in Johto. A fully grown, female Tyranitar. They had it chained, using its power to pulverize rock non-stop for what we think was months. It's in unimaginable pain, and it sees everything and everyone as a threat. Ash's expression was grim. He closed his eyes, extending his senses, his aura reaching out ahead of them. Even from miles away, he could feel it. A raging, screaming inferno of pain, hatred, and terror so potent it was like a physical blow. It wasn't just anger. It was a bottomless well of betrayal. Moments later, the ship descended toward the familiar man-made island of Aether Paradise. It had been transformed. The cold, sterile white structures were now softened with lush green roofs, cascading waterfalls, and vast, open-air habitats where Pokémon of all types roamed freely. It was a testament to Lily's vision, a true paradise. But at its heart, a siren was blaring, a stark red light flashing from one of the heavily reinforced central buildings. The ramp lowered before they even touched down, and Lily ran out, Ash right behind her. Staff in white Aether uniforms scrambled, their faces etched with panic. They were directed down a corridor of pristine white, the air growing colder, the sound of titanic impacts growing louder until the very floor vibrated with them. They arrived at an observation chamber separated from the containment cell by a sheet of reinforced plexiglass 3 feet thick. And it was cracking. A web of fractures spread from a dozen impact points. On the other side was a nightmare. The Tyranitar was immense, larger than any Ash had seen before. Its dark green, armor-like hide was scarred and pitted. A broken manacle still hung from one of its wrists, a cruel reminder of its captivity. But it was the eyes that held Ash's attention. They were blazing with red-hot fury, pupils dilated with sheer, unadulterated terror. It wasn't attacking. It was thrashing, desperately trying to escape a cage it couldn't see, a memory it couldn't flee. It threw its full weight against the glass again and again, a deafening boom echoing with each impact, a guttural roar of pure agony tearing from its throat. It's going to bring the whole section down. One of the technicians shouted. President, we have to use lethal force protocols. No. Lily's voice was an iron command. We are not them. We do not kill Pokémon that are in pain. Stand down. She moved to an intercom. Tyranitar, please. We're here to help you. You're safe now. Her voice was filled with genuine empathy, but it was like throwing a pebble into a hurricane. The Tyranitar didn't even seem to hear her. It roared, its mouth gaping as it began to gather dark energy for a hyper beam aimed directly at the weakening glass. It's no good, Lily, Ash said quietly, his voice calm amidst the chaos. He placed a hand on her shoulder. It can't hear your words. It can only hear its own pain. He stepped past her, his gaze fixed on the raging creature. The staff looked at him, a stranger, with confusion and alarm. What are you doing? A security chief asked, moving to block his path. Ash didn't look at him. His eyes were locked with the Tyranitar's. Lower the inner containment shield. The chief stared at him as if he'd lost his mind. Are you insane? It will kill you. It will kill us all. Do it, Kale, Lily said, her voice trembling but firm. She trusted him. Even after all these years, that faith was absolute. The chief, Kale, looked at his president in disbelief, but he saw the conviction in her eyes. Hesitantly, he turned to the console, lowering inner shield on the president's authority. With a heavy hydraulic groan, the transparent wall began to recede into the floor. The full, undiluted force of the Tyranitar's rage and despair washed over them. The air grew heavy, thick with psychic residue. The staff flinched back. The Tyranitar paused its charge, its head snapping toward the new opening, its body coiling like a catastrophic spring, ready to unleash hell upon them. Ash walked forward. He didn't summon a Pokémon. He didn't raise his hands in a defensive posture. He simply walked, his footsteps steady and sure, crossing the threshold from the safe observation room into the kill zone. Pikachu started to follow, but Ash gave a minute shake of his head, a silent command to stay with Lily. The Tyranitar let out a warning roar that shook the foundations of the building. Its tail, powerful enough to topple mountains, slammed into the ground, cracking the concrete. It was a clear threat. One more step and you die. Ash kept walking. He stopped about 20 feet away from it, a hopelessly fragile figure before the behemoth of pain and fury. He didn't speak. He closed his eyes. And he reached out. It wasn't a physical gesture. The air around him didn't glow. There was no dramatic display of power. Instead, for those sensitive enough to feel it, for Lily, for Pikachu, for the Tyranitar itself, the very atmosphere in the room shifted. The chaotic, screaming pressure of the Tyranitar's agony was met by a presence. It wasn't a wall, or a counter force. It was a vast, quiet, and profoundly gentle warmth. It was the feeling of a calm ocean meeting a raging storm, not to break it, but to absorb it. For the briefest of moments, the world shifted. It was no longer a concrete cell, but a whirlwind of red-hued sensation. This was the Tyranitar's reality. Jagged shards of memory. The cold bite of metal chains, the searing pain of overexertion, the mocking laughter of cruel faces, the endless, soul-crushing noise of the mine. Fear. Betrayal. Hatred. A vortex of agony with no beginning and no end. And then, into that vortex, a new feeling entered. It was not a command. It was not an attack. It was a voice, but a voice made of pure feeling, not sound. I see you. The red storm faltered for a second. I feel your pain. I am not here to chain you. I am not here to hurt you. The presence didn't try to erase the pain. It did something far more profound. It shared it. A flicker of understanding passed through the Tyranitar's tortured mind. This small, fragile creature was feeling a sliver of its agony, and was not turning away. It was standing firm, offering not pity, but solidarity. You are not alone in the dark. The red faded. The maelstrom slowed. The memory of the sun on its back, a lifetime ago, a distant, happy thing, surfaced. The feeling of cool water. The taste of fresh berries. In the real world, the change was staggering. The Tyranitar's earth-shattering roars subsided into a low, guttural moan. The murderous light in its eyes flickered, replaced by a dawning confusion. The dark energy gathering for the hyperbeam dissipated into nothing. Its colossal body, which had been coiled tight with aggression, began to tremble, the tension draining away like water from a burst dam. Ash took another slow step forward. Then another. He was right in front of it now, standing beneath its massive head. He slowly raised a hand, not toward its face, but toward the broken shackle still hanging from its arm. The Tyranitar flinched, a growl rumbling in its chest. The red flickered in its eyes again. I know, the silent voice of Ash's aura whispered. This is what hurt you. Let me help. He didn't touch the manacle. He simply rested his palm on the Tyranitar's scarred, armored forearm, just below the cold metal. His touch was warm. Through it, he poured a wave of pure, undiluted empathy, of safety, of promise. A sound like a mountain weeping echoed in the vast room. The Tyranitar lowered its head, its body slumping. The giant, terrifying creature gently, hesitantly, nudged Ash's shoulder with the side of its snout, a gesture so tender and vulnerable it seemed impossible. A single, huge tear, thick as sap, rolled from its eye and splashed onto the concrete floor. The observation room was utterly silent. The staff, the security chief, the technicians, they all stared, mouths agape, their minds unable to process what they had just witnessed. They had seen a force of nature on the verge of cataclysmic destruction be tamed not by force, but by a whisper of the soul. Lily watched, her own tears tracking silently down her face. It was one thing to theorize, to read reports and data. It was another to see it, to feel it. This was the miracle she had gambled everything on. And it was more potent than she had ever imagined. Ash kept his hand on the Tyranitar, murmuring soft, audible words now. It's okay. You're safe now. We're going to get this thing off you. He looked back over his shoulder at the stunned Aether personnel. His voice was quiet, but it carried the unshakable weight of command. Get me a plasma cutter. Hours later, Ash stood on the private balcony of the suite Lily had assigned him. It was more luxurious than any place he had ever stayed, with a breathtaking panoramic view of Aether paradise and the open ocean beyond. The damaged shackle had been removed, and the Tyranitar was now resting peacefully in a new habitat, a vast, rocky expanse that mimicked the mountains of its home, sleeping a true, deep sleep for the first time in months. The door slid open behind him. It was Lily. She had changed out of her suit into a simple, elegant white dress. The staff is, well, they're somewhere between worship and terror, she said, a small, tired smile on her face. Our lead psychologist tendered his resignation. He said his entire field of study was just rendered obsolete. Ash chuckled softly. Tell him to unresign. I can't be everywhere at once. They need him. She came to stand beside him at the railing, the sea breeze gently stirring her hair. I was right, she whispered, her voice full of awe. But I was also wrong. I thought I was offering you a job. A position. But that's not what this is it? No, Ash said, his gaze fixed on the horizon. It's a responsibility. He turned to her, his eyes clear and decisive. The restlessness was gone, replaced by a deep, focused sense of purpose. He had found it. A new peak to climb, one not of power, but of healing. A challenge that no one else in the world could face. I'll do it, Lily, he said. I'll take the position. But on my terms. Anything, she breathed. I'm not your employee. I'm not a resource to be managed, he stated, his tone leaving no room for argument. I'm your partner. We do this together. My judgment on what a Pokemon needs is final. No committees, no red tape. If I say a Pokemon needs a mountain to roam, we build it a mountain. If I say it needs to battle to reclaim its spirit, we find it a worthy opponent. We do what is right for them, always. No compromises. Lily's smile was brilliant, radiant. That's all I ever wanted to hear. Welcome to the Aether Foundation, partner. As she spoke, a comfortable silence settled between them, a renewal of an old bond on new, more equal ground. He was her miracle worker, but she was the one providing him the platform to change the world. They needed each other. Deep within the island, in a secondary data monitoring center, a senior technician squinted at his screen. It was the former Aether branch chief, Faba, now demoted to a glorified IT role after his past transgressions. He was running a routine diagnostic. Odd, he muttered to himself. He flagged a tiny data packet that had piggybacked on their external communications during the code red. It was minuscule, heavily encrypted, and had vanished almost as soon as it arrived, siphoning a fragment of sensor data from the containment wing. Probably just a ghost in the machine. A remnant from Lucamine's old spyware. He dismissed the alert, archiving the log and turning his attention back to his work. He didn't see the faint digital watermark left behind on the encrypted packet before it vanished into the global network. A stylized, three-headed dragon coiled around a spiraling strand of DNA. Project Chimera. The tracker was now active. They knew their target was in place. On the balcony, Ash was unaware of the invisible threat that had just locked onto him. He felt Pikachu climb onto his shoulder, a familiar, comforting weight. He reached up, scratching his friend behind the ears. For the first time, he let his aura expand fully, not to focus on one Pokemon, but to feel the entirety of the sanctuary around him. He felt thousands of lives. The recovering Tyranitar, her dreams now peaceful. The flock of rescued Pidgey, their fear of humans slowly receding. The ancient, cloned Aerodactyl, its genetic code humming with a strange emptiness he now knew he could fill. It was a chorus of heartbeats, a tapestry of souls. It was a weight, a burden, a sacred trust. It was a new kind of power, a new kind of journey. He was Ash Ketchum, the world monarch. But as he looked out at the moonlit paradise, he felt the truth of his new title settle into his very bones. He was the steward of life. And he was finally home. Chapter 2. Echoes of the Past. The first week was a whirlwind of acclamation. Ash's days were no longer defined by the linear path of a road or the bracket of a tournament, but by the rhythmic, overlapping needs of the hundreds of Pokemon under his care. He'd start his mornings not with a training regimen, but in the sprawling arboreal habitat, sitting silently with a family of Apom rescued from a defunct circus. He didn't speak or command. He simply sat, radiating a quiet calm, letting his aura be a silent reassurance that no whips or cages would ever appear again. He'd spend his afternoons in the aquatic rehabilitation zone, swimming with a pod of dugong whose migration route had been destroyed by pollution. He felt their deep, resonant sorrow for their lost home and, bit by bit, replaced it with a sense of security, of a new beginning. Lily was his constant partner in this. She handled the monumental logistics, the staffing, the resource allocation, leaving Ash free to be the nexus of the entire operation. They worked in a seamless, often unspoken rhythm. She would identify a need on her datapad, a spike in stress hormones in the desert biome, and by the time she walked over, Ash would already be there, calming the crocorock that was having nightmares of its time in an illegal fighting pit. It's like you have an early warning system for their emotions, she commented one afternoon, watching him from the edge of a meticulously recreated savanna. He was standing perfectly still while a young girafarig, once so terrified it would faint if anyone approached, tentatively licked a salt block from his hand. It's more like a radio, Ash replied, not taking his eyes off the Pokemon. Everyone's broadcasting on their own frequency. I'm just learning to listen to them all at once. The girafarig finished the block and, instead of bolting, nudged his hand, a clear, simple feeling of gratitude washing over it. Ash smiled, stroking its neck. The feeling he got back was better than winning any badge. It was in the middle of this newfound peace that the sky was broken by a sound far more conventional than Lily's vessel. A chartered passenger jet, sleek and official, descended towards the island's primary landing pad. This was not a surprise visit. It was an official arrival, cleared by Lily's administration, but it still put the island on a low-level alert. Ash and Lily stood on the observation deck overlooking the pad as the jet's ramp lowered. Lily smoothed the front of her white business dress, a flicker of nervous energy about her. She was insistent, Lily said quietly. She said the work we're doing here could have mythological implications. I couldn't exactly tell the champion of Sinnoh. No. Ash's posture didn't change, but a new alertness entered his eyes. He knew who was coming. There were few trainers in the world who could make him feel that spark of true, high-level challenge just by their reputation alone. The figure that emerged at the top of the ramp was unmistakable. Clad in a stylish black dress and coat, with long, pale blonde hair that spilled over her shoulders, held back by distinctive black clips. She moved with an unhurried grace that commanded attention, an aura of intellectual and physical power preceding her like a bow wave. At her side, her own shadow seemed to stretch and coalesce into the formidable shape of her Garchomp, the land shark Pokemon's yellow eyes sweeping over the island with predatory intelligence. Cynthia, the Sinnoh champion, descended the ramp. Her gaze was not that of a tourist. It was the sharp, analytical look of a scholar and a warrior, someone who had come not to admire, but to dissect. Her eyes passed over the impressive facility, over Lily, and then settled on Ash with an intensity that felt like a physical weight. President Lily, Cynthia said, her voice a smooth, cool alto. She offered a polite nod. Thank you for accommodating me on such short notice. Your new Aether paradise is even more impressive than the reports suggested. Champion Cynthia. Welcome, Lily replied, stepping forward and extending a hand, which Cynthia shook firmly. We're honored to have you. I trust your flight was pleasant. It was efficient, Cynthia said, her attention already shifting back to Ash. She took a step closer, her Garchomp mirroring her movement. The air crackled with a silent pressure, the ambient power of two of the world's strongest trainers meeting. Pikachu, on Ash's shoulder, pushed himself up, his cheeks sparking defensively. Ash Ketchum, Cynthia said, the name spoken like a line from a history text. The world monarch. I've followed your career with great interest. From your unconventional victory in the Orange Islands to the crisis in Kalos. And now this. Her eyes swept over the sanctuary again. The rumors are fascinating. They say you've traded the battlefield for the nursery. That you tame enraged Pokemon with a touch and heal broken bloodlines with your will. It sounds like a myth from my homeland. Sometimes myths have a basis in reality, champion, Ash said, his voice even and calm. He met her intense gaze without flinching. He could feel her aura. It was sharp, brilliant, and controlled, like a finely cut diamond. There was no malice, but there was a deep, driving skepticism. A need for proof. Indeed, Cynthia mused. But myths, like Pokemon, can be misunderstood. Deceiving. I am a scholar. I deal in verifiable truths, not rumors. She gave him a small, challenging smile. The stories say you don't just train Pokemon. You achieve a state of perfect synergy. A soul resonance, as President Lily's research papers call it. I find it difficult to quantify such a concept without a practical demonstration. There it was. The challenge. It wasn't a boisterous cry from a rival. It was a cold, clean request for data, delivered in the form of an unavoidable confrontation. Lily stepped forward protectively. Champion, Ash's work here is sensitive. It's not about putting on a show. On the contrary, President, Cynthia interrupted gently but firmly. If what you claim is true, it is the most important development in the history of human Pokemon relations. It cannot, and should not, remain a secret, hidden away in a private sanctuary. It needs to be tested. Verified. Under conditions that leave no room for doubt. She looked directly at Ash, her eyes glittering. A full 6-on-6 battle. No items. No gimmicks. Just you, me, and the bonds we have with our partners. Let me see this resonance, for myself. Ash looked at Lily, saw the anxiety in her eyes, and gave a subtle, reassuring nod. He then turned back to Cynthia, a slow grin spreading across his face. The quiet steward receded for a moment, and the battler, the champion who had faced down legends, looked out. The restlessness he'd felt before his arrival here was gone, but the fire was not. It was just banked, waiting for the right moment. This was that moment. I'm not a myth, champion, he said. And my partners aren't a theory. If you want a demonstration, you'll get one. I accept. The battle was held in a secluded, state-of-the-art stadium carved into the island's core, a private project of Lily's designed for just such an occasion. The arena floor was a vast, mutable field of holographic earth and light, capable of replicating any environment. For this, they chose a neutral, grassy plain under a simulated afternoon sun. Lily was the sole spectator, watching from a reinforced observation booth, her nettles at her side, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Cynthia stood on one side of the field, calm and composed, a picture of focused intensity. Ash took the other, rolling his shoulders, a familiar, electric energy humming through him. Standard rules apply, the automated referee's voice announced. The battle is over when all 6 of one side's Pokemon are unable to continue. Trainers, send out your first Pokemon. Cynthia unclipped a Pokeball from her belt with practiced elegance. The first move sets the tone. Spiritomb, let's begin. The ball opened, and the odd keystone materialized on the field, a swirling vortex of purple ectoplasm and ghostly faces bound to it. The air grew cold, heavy with the pressure of 108 bound spirits. Ash didn't hesitate. Gengar, I choose you. His own ghost burst forth in a cackle of manic glee, its wide, red eyes locking onto its opponent. A ghost versus ghost matchup to start. Bold, Cynthia commented, a hint of approval in her voice. Spiritomb, use Shadow Ball. The vortex of souls compressed, launching a sphere of dark, swirling energy. Gengar, dodge and use Sludge Bomb. Ash commanded. Gengar melted into its own shadow on the ground, the shadow ball sailing harmlessly over it. A split second later, Gengar erupted from the floor directly beneath Spiritomb, spitting a volley of toxic purple sludge. But Cynthia's strategy was already a step ahead. Will-o-wisp. Her command was soft, almost conversational. Just as the sludge bomb was launched, Spiritomb pulsed, releasing a ring of ethereal blue flames. The flames intercepted the sludge midair, neutralizing most of it, but that wasn't their primary purpose. The burst of fire forced Gengar to pull back, and in that moment, Spiritomb was already sinking into the ground with phantom force. It's gone, Ash muttered, his eyes scanning the field. He felt the faint ripple of Gengar's confusion. Anticipate, Cynthia said coolly. It can emerge anywhere. Dark pulse, full radius, the moment it appears. Gengar became a spinning dervish of shadowy energy, but it was a reactive move. Ash knew it. He closed his eyes, filtering out the sounds, the lights. He focused on the low hum of his aura, extending it, trying to find the pinprick of Spiritomb's malevolent energy. He felt it. A cold spot, gathering behind Gengar. There was no time for a verbal command. He just pushed the thought, the feeling, the intent. Down. Gengar flattened itself to the ground an instant before Spiritomb erupted from the very spot it had been hovering, its phantom force attack swiping through empty air. Spiritomb's own momentum left it exposed. Now, dazzling gleam. Ash shouted, seizing the opening. Gengar's body lit up with a blinding, fairy-type radiance. The blast caught Spiritomb at point-blank range, throwing it back against its keystone with a spectral shriek. Cynthia's eyebrow raised a fraction of an inch. Impressive reaction time. But not enough. Sucker punch. Before Gengar could press the advantage, Spiritomb shot forward, a blur of dark energy, striking Gengar with a cheap shot that sent it tumbling. The battle raged on, a high-speed chess match. Ash's synergy was uncanny, his Pokémon reacting to his unspoken intentions. But Cynthia was a master strategist, her every move calculated to counter, to trap, to control the flow of the battle. She was always 2 steps ahead, forcing Ash to rely on pure instinct and the flawless trust of his team. Spiritomb finally fell to a cleverly redirected Shadow Ball, but not before inflicting a heavy curse on Gengar, forcing Ash to recall it. Cynthia's second Pokémon was Togekiss, a creature of deceptive grace and overwhelming power. Ash countered with his Sirfetch'd, leading to a dazzling display of aerial combat versus grounded martial prowess. Sirfetch'd fought brilliantly, its leak shield deflecting aura spheres and air slashes, but the sheer, relentless pressure from Togekiss eventually wore it down. One by one, they traded blows. Cynthia's Roserade, a master of status and terrain, fell to the brute, unpredictable force of Ash's Dracovish. Her fearsome Electros, with no weaknesses, was finally brought down by a combination of Pikachu's speed and a perfectly timed Iron Tail after a long, grueling war of attrition. Ash was losing Pokémon, but he was taking Cynthia's down with him, fighting for every inch. The score was 4 down on each side. The field was scarred, the air thick with the smell of ozone and expended energy. You fight with a beautiful sort of chaos, Cynthia observed, recalling her Electros. Her breathing was slightly heavier now, the cool composure giving way to a fighter's focus. But chaos is not control. Let's see how your synergy holds against perfected power. Melodic, your stage. The water serpent that emerged was breathtaking, a vision of beauty and strength. It coiled on the field, its scales shimmering, its presence serene but immensely powerful. Ash knew who he needed. He looked at the Pokeball in his hand. I'm counting on you, old friend. Sceptile, let's go. The forest Pokémon appeared with a sharp cry, blades on its arms glinting. It immediately sensed the power of its opponent, its body tensing. A classic type advantage, Cynthia noted. A textbook choice. But my Melodic is anything but textbook. Use Ice Beam. Melodic unleashed a blast of Arctic energy. Leaf Blade, cut through it. Ash countered. Sceptile charged, its arm blades glowing green. It met the Ice Beam not by dodging, but by slicing into it, its leaf blades carving through the frozen energy in a shower of glittering shards, a feat of incredible power and precision. It closed the distance in a heartbeat. Too predictable. Disarming voice, Cynthia commanded. Melodic didn't panic. It released a charming, fairy-type cry that washed over Sceptile. It wasn't a damaging attack, but it was disorienting, causing Sceptile to falter for a crucial second. Now, wrap it up with Bind. Melodic's body shot forward like a whip, ensnaring Sceptile in its powerful coils. Sceptile struggled, but the serpent's grip was like living steel. It's over, Cynthia stated. The closer you get, the more dangerous Melodic becomes. Sceptile let out a cry of frustration, feeling its energy being squeezed out of it. Ash felt it too, a spike of panic and pain from his Pokémon. He closed his eyes, pushing his own calm, his own resolve, down their bond. Don't fight its strength with strength. Use your own. Be the seed in the stone. Find the crack. The thought was an image, a feeling. Sceptile understood. It stopped struggling against the crushing grip. Instead, it focused its energy inward. The seeds on its back began to glow. What is it doing? Lily whispered from the booth. Leech seed, Ash said aloud, his eyes snapping open. Tiny, glowing seeds shot from Sceptile's back, embedding themselves in Melodic's coiled body. Melodic hissed in annoyance, tightening its grip, but it was too late. Green tendrils of energy began to snake from the seeds, siphoning its strength and feeding it back into Sceptile. The tide was turning. Clever, Cynthia admitted, a flicker of genuine surprise in her eyes. But a slow victory won't be a victory at all. Scald. Melodic's body began to glow, its skin temperature skyrocketing. It was trying to boil Septile from within its own grasp. Septile roared in pain as jets of superheated steam erupted around it. Septile, hang on. Solar beam, now. Ash roared. It can't. Cynthia retorted. It needs to charge. Ordinarily, she would be right. But as Melodic's scald attack reached its peak, Ash poured his own energy, his own life force, through the bond. He felt a dizzying drain, a sudden weakness in his knees, but he pushed through it. He was giving Septile the sunlight it didn't have. Septile's head snapped up, its mouth open. It didn't gather light. It became light. An explosive, point-blank solar beam erupted from its maw, blasting the inside of Melodic's coils. The beautiful serpent shrieked, its body spasming, its grip involuntarily releasing. Septile landed on the ground, smoking and exhausted, but free. Melodic slumped into the water feature of the arena, its body covered in scorch marks. It had fainted. Cynthia stared for a long moment before recalling her Melodic. She looked at Ash, who was breathing heavily, a sheen of sweat on his brow from the sheer effort of will. You supplemented its energy with your own, she said, her voice filled with disbelief and dawning wonder. That is not a bond. That is a fusion. She now had only one Pokemon left. Ash had two. But her last was the strongest. I have seen enough to know the legends are true, Cynthia said, her voice regaining its steady, serious tone. But this test is not complete. The pinnacle of my team against the pinnacle of your synergy. Garchomp, to me. Her ace appeared, a creature of raw, primal power. It let out a roar that shook the stadium, its gaze locking onto Septile. Ash knew Septile was too exhausted to face this beast. He recalled it with a word of thanks. Now it was time. He took the final Pokeball from his belt. The bond I share with him is the one that started it all. Lucario, I choose you. The Aura Pokemon appeared in a fighting stance, its crimson eyes immediately finding Garchomp. But it also glanced back at Ash, a silent communication passing between them. The air grew thick with a different kind of energy now. It wasn't just power. It was a deep, resonant hum. Lily, in the booth, leaned forward. This was the matchup she had been waiting for. Champion versus champion. Ace versus ace. Garchomp, Dragon Rush. Cynthia commanded, wasting no time. Garchomp became a speeding comet of draconic energy, its body wreathed in a blue aura as it charged across the field, tearing up the ground. Ash didn't issue a verbal command. He simply met Lucario's gaze. A shared understanding flowed between them. Lucario didn't brace for impact. It didn't prepare a counterattack. It stood its ground, closed its eyes, and raised its paws. Ash mirrored the movement, his own eyes closing. He reached out with his aura, not to Lucario, but with Lucario. Their two signatures, human and Pokemon, intertwined, weaving together into a single, complex harmony. In the face of the oncoming apocalypse that was Garchomp, Lucario became the calm at the center of the storm. An orb of deep blue aura, serene and stable, formed between its paws. It wasn't a weapon. It was a shield. But not a shield of force. A shield of concept. Garchomp's Dragon Rush, an attack of pure, ferocious momentum, slammed into the orb. And stopped. There was no explosion. No cataclysmic impact. The draconic energy didn't shatter the orb. It was absorbed. Nullified. Garchomp was stopped dead in its tracks, its most powerful attack rendered inert, like a wave crashing against a shore that simply ceased to exist. The blue energy of the Dragon Rush dissipated into nothingness. Garchomp stared in disbelief. Cynthia's jaw was set, her mind racing, trying to comprehend what she had just seen. It wasn't a block. It wasn't a counter. It was a negation. How? She breathed. We didn't fight your power, Ash explained, his eyes still closed. We resonated with it. We found its frequency and created a perfect cancellation. We didn't defeat the wave. We calmed the ocean. Before Cynthia could process this, Lucario's eyes snapped open. It was already moving. Guided by Ash's shared intent, it flowed around the stunned Garchomp, not with the blinding speed of an extreme speed, but with a fluid, water-like grace. It didn't strike with bone rush or punch with close combat. It simply touched Garchomp at key pressure points on its neck and joints, its paws glowing with that same serene blue aura. They weren't attacks. They were transfers of energy. Lucario was disrupting Garchomp's connection to its own power, severing its link to Cynthia's commands for a fraction of a second. Garchomp roared in frustration, trying to swing its massive claws, but its movements were suddenly clumsy, disjointed. It was like a master swordsman whose sword had suddenly turned to lead. Garchomp, break free. Use Brick Break. Cynthia cried, a hint of desperation in her voice. Garchomp raised its claw, which glowed with fighting energy, but as it swung, Lucario was no longer there. It was behind it, one paw resting gently on the base of Garchomp's skull. Or a sphere, Ash whispered. A sphere of energy formed at Lucario's paw. But it didn't launch. It pulsed, a single, concentrated wave of will that washed through Garchomp. It wasn't an attack meant to cause pain. It was a psychic signal, a command sent directly to the Pokemon's nervous system. Sleep. Garchomp's eyes rolled back. Its immense body swayed for a moment before it crashed to the ground, not with the thud of a fainted Pokemon, but with the heavy sigh of one falling into a deep, sudden slumber. The automated referee's voice was the only sound in the silent stadium. Garchomp is unable to battle. Lucario wins. The victory goes to challenger Ash Ketchum. Cynthia stood frozen for a moment, staring at her sleeping dragon. Then, she slowly recalled it. She looked across the field at Ash and Lucario, who now stood side by side, breathing in sync. A slow smile spread across her face. It was not a smile of defeat, but one of profound, exhilarating discovery. Incredible, she said, her voice full of genuine awe. She walked onto the field, her analytical gaze replaced by one of sheer wonder. I've spent my life studying the myths of Sinnoh. The stories of the Aura Guardians of old. They spoke of a bond so deep the human and Pokemon become one will, one soul. I thought it was poetry. A metaphor. She stopped in front of him. I was wrong. You are a living myth, Ash Ketchum. Later, in Lily's pristine office overlooking the moonlit ocean, the atmosphere was thick with intellectual excitement. Lily had provided them with refreshments, but they sat untouched. The negation of the Dragon Rush, it defies conventional physics, Cynthia was saying, pacing the floor. It suggests your aura can interact with and dismantle the very energy that constitutes a Pokemon's attack. This isn't just a new training technique, it's a new field of science. Of metaphysics. I just felt what Garchomp was going to do, and I knew Lucario and I had to be the opposite, Ash tried to explain simply. Not angry, but calm. Not fast, but still. It just worked. It just worked, Cynthia repeated with a laugh. Spoken like a true prodigy. You feel what scholars spend lifetimes trying to understand. Her excitement was palpable, infectious. She looked from Ash to Lily. President, the work you are doing here, it is the most important research being conducted on this planet. I must be a part of it. I would like to offer my services as a consultant, a strategist, and a researcher. My duties as champion can be delegated for a time. This is where I need to be. Lily's eyes widened slightly. To have the Sinnoh champion on their staff was a political and strategic coup of unimaginable proportions. We would be honored, champion. Please, call me Cynthia, she said, her smile warm. Just as a new sense of partnership was settling over the room, it was shattered. A piercing alarm blared through the facility, the same code red siren from Ash's first day. A holographic map of the island appeared on Lily's desk, a section of the aquatic nursery flashing in crimson. Containment breach? Ash asked, instantly on his feet. No, Lily said, her face grim as she read the data streaming in. It's a forced entry. External hostile action. Someone is in the lower aquatic labs. They raced through the corridors, the peaceful sanctuary once again a place of emergency. What's down there? Cynthia asked, running alongside them, her battle-ready composure returned in an instant. The primary hatchery, Lily answered, her voice tight with fear. It's where Ash has been working with the most vulnerable eggs. He was just stabilizing a clutch from a rescued Dragonair, including an egg that showed signs of being a Dratini with its hidden ability. It's priceless. They burst into the aquatic lab's observation level to a scene of chaos. Two figures clad in black, form-fitting tactical gear were standing by a shattered incubation tank. They moved with an eerie silence and efficiency. Their faces were obscured by reflective visors. One was holding a cylindrical stasis pod, inside which a single, precious Dratini egg was glowing softly. Their Pokémon were just as unnerving. A Scizor, its pincers gleaming with an unnatural, laser-honed sharpness, and a Weavile that seemed to vibrate with hyperkinetic energy, its claws leaving faint after images as it twitched. Both Pokémon had small, glowing cybernetic implants visible on their necks. Project Chimera, Cynthia breathed, recognizing the whispers she'd heard from the international police. A rogue science division obsessed with forced, technological evolution. Put the egg back, Ash's voice was dangerously low. The agent holding the pod just chuckled, a distorted, electronic sound coming from his helmet. The breeding master. We'll be taking your research along with this specimen. Our methods are far more efficient than yours. Without another word, the agents turned to flee. We can't let them escape. Lily cried. Garchomp, stop them. Cynthia yelled, throwing her Pokeball. Ash did the same. Lucario, you're with me. The two champion-level Pokémon materialized, but the Chimera agents were prepared. The agent with the Scizor tapped a device on his wrist. Protocol 3. Blitz. The Scizor's eyes glowed red. It moved with a speed that was utterly unnatural, a red blur that met Garchomp's charge head-on. It wasn't a normal bullet punch. It was a piston-driven strike augmented by technology, sending even the mighty Garchomp stumbling back a step. Lucario flowed towards the second agent, but the Weavile was a phantom. It danced around Lucario's aura spheres, its movements jerky and unpredictable, augmented by micro-thrusters on its limbs. It was chaos. Ash and Cynthia, who had just been opponents, now moved as a single, fluid unit. Cynthia, their tech is compensating for their Pokemon's weaknesses. We have to overwhelm it. Ash shouted over the din. I see it. Garchomp, Stone Edge, create a perimeter. Garchomp roared, slamming its claws into the floor. Pillars of rock erupted, boxing the agents in, cutting off their escape. The agent holding the egg was trapped. Unacceptable, his filtered voice hissed. He pointed at Lucario. Target the aura user. Erase him. The Weavile's eyes glowed, and a low, horrible hum filled the air. It opened its mouth, but instead of an ice beam or a dark pulse, a beam of pure, concussive static shot out, an attack that seemed to unmake the air it passed through. Lucario, look out! Ash yelled, but Lucario was already moving, their bond anticipating the threat. It dodged, the beam grazing the wall behind it, which seemed to pixelate and dissolve into nothing for a moment before reforming. What was that? Lily gasped. While Lucario was occupied, the Scizor charged Ash. But it never reached him. A wall of sand, rock, and draconic fury slammed into its side. Garchomp, directed by Cynthia, was acting as Ash's personal bodyguard. Seeing their escape foiled and two champions bearing down on them, the agent holding the egg made a decision. He threw the stasis pod to his partner. Go. I'll hold them. The second agent activated a cloaking field and vanished. He's getting away with the egg. Ash yelled. We'll get him, Cynthia said, her eyes cold as steel. But this one is ours. Together, Garchomp and Lucario cornered the remaining agent and his Scizor. Outmatched and overwhelmed, the Scizor was quickly disabled by a combined Dragon Claw and Aura Sphere. The agent raised his hands in surrender. They had him. Kale, the security chief from Ash's first day, arrived with his team, their weapons trained. Don't move, Kale ordered. The captured agent just stood there. Then, a faint smile seemed to touch his lips, visible even through the visor. Fools. Project Chimera does not leave loose ends. Before anyone could react, the cybernetic implant on his neck began to glow with a sickly, black and purple light. It wasn't the red of his Pokemon's tech. It was a cold, alien energy, flecked with what looked like tiny black crystals. His body convulsed violently. He's self-destructing. Cynthia realized, pulling Ash back. But there was no explosion. The agent just stiffened, a low humming sound emanating from him before he collapsed, completely inert. A wisp of black smoke, smelling of ozone and something else, something like a starless void, curled from the fried implant on his neck. In a darkened monitoring station hundreds of miles away, a woman with a severe haircut and sharp eyes watched a screen displaying energy readings. The international police insignia was visible on her uniform. It was Annabelle. Sir, she said into her comms. I have another one. The same anomalous energy signature we detected in the Hoenn incident. This time, it originated from Aether Paradise in Alola. She zoomed in on the spectral analysis. It's not human technology. It's not Ultra Beast energy, either. It's something else. Something empty. Back in the damaged lab, the tension was slowly being replaced by a chilling new reality. They had won the battle but lost the prize. And their enemy was more ruthless and mysterious than they could have imagined. Cynthia knelt by the comatose agent, her expression grim. They're willing to die, or be killed, to protect their secrets. She looked up at Ash, her earlier excitement replaced by a grave seriousness. My decision is made. I'm staying. Whatever this is, it's not just about your power anymore. This is a threat that needs to be met. Lily stood beside them, looking at the empty, shattered incubator. She looked at Cynthia, the powerful Sinnoh champion who had come to test Ash and was now pledging her allegiance to his cause. Then she looked at Ash, who was staring at the spot where the vanishing agent had disappeared, his expression not of anger, but of cold, hard resolve. A quiet, unspoken rivalry had been brewing between the two women since Cynthia's arrival, a contest of intellect and affection centered on the man before them. But in that moment, seeing the threat they now faced, it melted away, replaced by a shared understanding. They were on the same side. They were his partners. His methods may be efficient, Ash said, his voice low, finally breaking the silence as he remembered the agent's mocking words. But ours are stronger. He stole an egg. We're going to build a world where he has nowhere left to run. The two most powerful women in the room looked at him, and for the first time, they fully understood the scale of the journey they had just embarked on. It was a journey that would require not just a hero, but a leader. And he was standing right in front of them. Chapter 3. The Faller and the Void. The attempted theft of the Dratini egg and the Chimera agent's chilling, remote execution sent a ripple of paranoia through Aether Paradise. Lily, channeling her administrative prowess, locked the island down. Security protocols were quadrupled, digital firewalls were reinforced by the best minds money could buy, and physical patrols were supplemented by a network of Pokémon with keen senses. The silent flight of Noctowl at night, the earth-shaking perception of a dozen Dugtrio, the psychic vigilance of a team of trained Alakazam. Cynthia, applying her strategic mind to defense, turned the beautiful sanctuary into a veritable fortress. But the atmosphere among the core group was not one of fear. It was one of focused resolve. The human threat of Project Chimera was tangible, a problem that could be met with strategy and strength. The true source of the chilling unease came from the unknown. The bizarre, void-like energy that had fried the captured agent's cybernetics. It was a question with no answer, a shadow without a source. Ash, for his part, refused to let the threat derail their mission. If anything, it spurred him on. He poured his energy into the remaining eggs in the Dragonair clutch, his aura a constant, warm presence, ensuring they hatched healthy and strong, free from the trauma their mother had endured. He spent hours with the mother Dragonair herself, her psychic wounds deep and complex. He didn't just soothe her. He journeyed with her through her painful memories, his presence a shield, allowing her to process the trauma without being consumed by it. He felt the phantom chill of her capture, the claustrophobia of her confinement, and gently, persistently, replaced those feelings with the warmth of the Alolan sun and the gentle currents of her new, safe lagoon. It was during one of these sessions, as Ash sat by the water's edge with the Dragonair's head resting peacefully in his lap, that Cynthia approached him. She held a datapad, her expression a familiar mix of academic curiosity and grave concern. We have a problem, she said, her voice low. A different kind. She gestured to the datapad, which displayed a complex, fluctuating energy graph. Our long-range sensors, the ones we use to monitor for potential ultra-wormhole formations, are picking up static. Ash looked at the screen. The familiar, chaotic spikes of dimensional energy that heralded a wormhole were there, but they were overlaid with a discordant, jagged pattern. Static. That's the best word I have for it, Cynthia confirmed. It's like interference on a cosmic scale. Every time a wormhole begins to form naturally in the region, this energy signature appears. It seems to destabilize them. Makes them erratic. Worse, the Pokémon are reacting to it. Even the ones with no psychic abilities are agitated. It's like they can feel something fundamentally wrong. Ash knew exactly what she meant. He could feel it too. It was a subtle, background hum of wrongness, like a single off-key instrument in a global orchestra. It set his teeth on edge. He had assumed it was a lingering effect from the Chimera attack, but this was different. Deeper. Lily's research team wants to proceed with the next phase of our charter, Cynthia continued. The study and peaceful relocation of ultra beasts that have become stranded in our world. Specifically, a Kartana that's been slicing up the landscape on Ula Island. But opening a gateway to ultra space with this interference, it's a major risk. What does Lily think? Ash asked, gently stroking the Dragonair. She's deferring to us, Cynthia said, her eyes meeting his. To you. She'll handle the mechanics, but you're the one who understands the more esoteric side of things. Can you feel what this static is? Ash closed his eyes, extending his aura. He didn't focus on the Pokemon around him this time. He reached further, past the island, past the ocean, towards the fabric of space-time itself. He found the familiar, wild energy of the ultra wormholes, a feeling like raw, untamed potential. And woven through it, he found the static. It felt empty, cold. It was the absence of feeling, the antithesis of the vibrant life energy that pulsed from every living creature. It wasn't just a lack of warmth. It was an active, aggressive coldness that seemed to suck the warmth out of everything it touched. It felt like the energy from the Chimera agent's implant, magnified 1,000 times over. It's deliberate, Ash said, his voice grim. It's not a natural phenomenon. It's trying to disrupt the connections. The pathways between worlds. Before they could discuss it further, an Aether Foundation hovercraft landed nearby. The ramp lowered, and two figures emerged. One was a stern-looking man in a sharp suit Ash didn't recognize. The other made his heart skip a beat. She wore the dark, practical uniform of the International Police, her lavender haircut in its familiar, asymmetrical style. Her eyes, a deep and serious shade of violet, scanned the area with a trained agent's vigilance before landing on Ash. A flicker of recognition, of something deeper and more complex, passed through them. Annabelle, Ash said, standing up. She gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. It was the most emotion he'd ever seen her display publicly. Ash, it's been a long time. Pikachu chirped happily from his shoulder, recognizing the powerful psychic from the battle frontier. Cynthia stepped forward, her expression guarded. To what do we owe the pleasure of a visit from the International Police? I wasn't aware we were under investigation. The man beside Annabelle cleared his throat. I am Section Chief Looker, he said, his voice clipped and official. And this is Salon Maiden Annabelle, head of our Ultra Beast Emergency Task Force. We are not here to investigate you, Champion Cynthia. We are here because of him. He nodded curtly towards Ash. Annabelle stepped past her superior, her gaze fixed on Ash. Her presence was a unique signature in his aura-sensitive world. It wasn't the calm strength of a Pokemon or the complex web of human emotion. It was a quiet, deep well of psychic power, a stillness that felt strangely familiar to the core of his own abilities. She was a faller, someone who had passed through an ultra wormhole and lost her memory, gaining a unique connection to them in the process. The energy signature you detected during the Chimera incident, Annabelle said, her voice soft but carrying immense weight. We have been tracking it for months. It has appeared at the sites of a dozen inexplicable events. Rogue technology failures, sudden psychic collapses, dimensional fissures. This static you're seeing on your sensors, it's the same energy. It's escalating. We believe Project Chimera has somehow learned to harness it, Looker added grimly. But we do not believe they are the source. We believe they have tapped into something far older and more dangerous. The air crackled. For the first time, Ash felt an external presence brush against his own aura. It was Annabelle. It wasn't an attack or an intrusion. It was a tentative, questioning touch, a silent conversation happening on a plane no one else could perceive. Her silent message was a feeling. You feel it too, don't you? The emptiness. He responded in kind, a projection of his own perception. It's hostile. It hates connection. A jolt of shared understanding passed between them, a bond forged not of words or history, but of a shared, terrifying perception of the world. They were the only two people on the island who could truly feel the enemy at their gates. The Kartana on Ula is our primary concern, Annabelle said, returning to the verbal conversation, though the silent one continued beneath. Its presence is aggravating the dimensional instability. We need to capture it and return it to ultra space. Aether's technology is the only means to do so safely. We are here to oversee and assist in that operation. Lily joined the group, having been alerted to the IP's arrival. After tense introductions, a plan was formed. Aether would provide the mobile wormhole generator. Cynthia would coordinate tactical defense against any external threats. Ash and Annabelle, with their unique sensitivities, would handle the Ultra Beast itself. The operation took place that evening. On a desolate, windswept plateau on Ula Ula Island, the landscape looked as though it had been put through a paper shredder. Mountainsides were sheared clean, ancient forests were reduced to splinters, and deep, precise cuts scarred the very bedrock. In the center of the destruction, the tiny, paper-thin form of Kartana zipped through the air, its movements impossibly fast, its blade-like limbs slicing through rock as if it were water. It wasn't malicious. It was simply existing, its very nature incompatible with this world. A temporary command center had been set up, a half-sphere of reinforced plating and humming electronics. Inside, Lily coordinated from a holographic console. Wormhole generator is charged. But the static is heavy here, Ash. The aperture might not be stable. We don't have a choice, Ash said, standing at the edge of the command center with Annabelle. It's getting more agitated. He could feel it. The Kartana's energy was a sharp, clean hum, but the void static was scraping against it, like nails on a chalkboard, driving it into a frenzy. It perceives the static as a threat, Annabelle murmured, her eyes distant. It is trying to cut it away. But it's cutting through reality itself to do so. All right, Ash said, turning to her. Looker's team will try to contain it with their tech. It won't work. Once they fail, we go in. You track the frequency of the static, pinpoint its hold on the Kartana. I'll do the rest. Annabelle nodded, a flicker of complete trust in her eyes. There was no need for further explanation. They understood each other on a level that transcended strategy. As predicted, Looker's attempt was a disaster. His agents deployed energy nets and sonic suppressors. Kartana moved through them like they weren't there, its speed beyond technological prediction. It sliced through their launchers and sent the agents scattering for cover. It's no good. Looker yelled into his comm. It's too fast. We're pulling back. The plateau was clear. Lily, open the wormhole. Ash commanded. A massive rig on the far side of the plateau whirred to life, projecting a beam of energy into the sky. Space twisted, tore, and a shimmering, unstable gateway to the stark white world of Ultra Forest flickered into existence. But it was ragged at the edges, pulsing with that sickly, black-purple static. The appearance of the wormhole drew Kartana's attention, but it also drew something else. The static in the area intensified tenfold. The very air grew cold. And from the damaged heart of the wormhole, something began to emerge. It wasn't a clean entry. It was a grotesque, violent tearing. A guzzlord, the gluttonous, black hole of an ultra beast, began to pull itself through. But it was wrong. Horribly wrong. Its familiar, black, rubbery hide was mottled with crystalline, black growths that seemed to absorb the light. Its multiple mouths drooled not saliva, but a viscous, black fluid that hissed as it dripped onto the ground, causing the rock to decay into gray dust. Its eyes, normally vacant and hungry, glowed with that same empty, malevolent energy from the Chimera agent's implant. What is that? Lily's panicked voice crackled over the comms. Its energy readings are off the charts. It's corrupted. The void, Annabelle whispered, her hand instinctively going to Ash's arm. It's using the Guzzlord as a vessel. It's not just an ultra beast anymore. It's an avatar of the emptiness. The corrupted Guzzlord let out a sound that wasn't a roar, but a cacophony of grinding static, a noise that hurt to hear. It ignored the Kartana. It ignored the machinery. Its glowing, empty eyes fixed on one target. Ash. It's a direct assault. Cynthia's voice cut in, sharp and analytical. The static isn't random interference. It's a targeted weapon. It used the wormhole as a delivery system. Ash, you're the target. The Guzzlord charged, its immense bulk moving with an unnatural speed. It wasn't just trying to devour, it was trying to erase. The ground it crossed, the air it displaced, everything felt diminished, lessened, in its wake. We have to fight it. Cynthia declared, already sending out her Garchomp. Lily, focus all power on keeping that wormhole open. We need to send both of them back. Garchomp unleashed a powerful dragon claw, raking it across the Guzzlord's flank. But the attack barely seemed to register. The black crystals on its hide pulsed, and the wound sealed itself with a sickening, grinding sound. This was not a battle of strength. It was a battle of concepts. Annabelle. Now, Ash said, his voice ringing with authority. He and Annabelle broke from cover, not running from the Guzzlord, but towards it. What are you doing? Looker shouted, aghast. Annabelle didn't answer. She closed her eyes, her face a mask of concentration. Her psychic energy flared, not as an attack, but as a fine-tuned sensor. She was ignoring the Guzzlord's immense physical presence and focusing on the alien energy infesting it. I have it, she said, her voice strained. It's like a parasite latched onto its core. A single, dissonant frequency. I can't remove it, but I can isolate it. Show you the thread. She pointed, not with her finger, but with her mind. Ash felt it instantly. A precise, razor-thin line of psychic direction, pointing directly into the heart of the Guzzlord's chaotic energy signature. It was the frequency of the void's influence. Got it, Ash said. He took a deep breath, and the world seemed to slow down. He didn't summon a Pokemon. He didn't charge an attack. He reached inward, to the core of his own being, and pulled on the boundless wellspring of his aura. It flared around him, a visible corona of brilliant blue light, pure and warm, a stark contrast to the Guzzlord's devouring blackness. He projected his aura, not as a blunt instrument like an aura sphere, but as a blade, honing it along the psychic line Annabelle had created. He wasn't attacking the Guzzlord. He was performing a kind of psychic surgery. His goal was not to destroy the beast, but to sever the parasitic connection to the void. As his aura blade made contact with the corrupted core, a psychic shockwave erupted. Ash and Annabelle were thrown into a shared vision. There was no light, no sound, no time. They were floating in an infinite, starless void. It was a place of absolute, crushing loneliness. Below them, or above them, or all around them, direction had no meaning here, was a presence. It wasn't a creature. It was a shape, a concept, a piece of geometry that was fundamentally wrong. A monolithic structure of silent, black crystal that drank the nothingness around it. It looked back at them. It didn't have eyes, but they felt its gaze. It was a gaze of cold, indifferent judgment. And then, it communicated, not in words, but in a pure, conceptual broadcast that flooded their minds. Less than error detected. Anomalous bond. Corruption of natural order. Harmony is discord. Connection is chaos. Initiating correction. The anomaly will be unmade. Greater than asterisk. The pressure was immense, the sheer alien nature of its thought process a violation. It saw Ash's aura, the very essence of connection, as a bug in the system of reality. A flaw to be deleted. Then the vision shattered. They were back on the plateau. Ash was on one knee, gasping, a trickle of blood running from his nose. Annabelle was beside him, pale and trembling, but her eyes were fierce. Their combined effort had worked. The corrupted Guzzlord let out a true roar of pain. The black crystals on its body fractured, crumbling into dust. The malevolent glow in its eyes faded, replaced by the familiar, vacant hunger of a normal Guzzlord. The void's puppet strings had been cut. But it was still a Guzzlord. Confused, enraged, and right on top of them. Before it could strike, the blur of the Kartana, which had been observing the entire exchange, finally moved. It saw its chance. It zipped past them, its movements a whisper of slicing air. It wasn't attacking them. It was heading for the unstable wormhole. The Guzzlord, its primary target gone and its controller banished, defaulted to its base instinct: consume. It turned its attention to the largest source of energy nearby, the wormhole generator. It's going for the generator. Lily screamed. If it destroys that, the wormhole will collapse and we'll all be trapped here with it. Not happening. Cynthia's voice rang out. Her Garchomp, joined by Ash's Pikachu, who had leapt from his shoulder, launched a combined Dragon Claw and Volt Tackle. The attack slammed into the Guzzlord's side, not to defeat it, but to redirect its charge, turning it just enough that it blundered past the generator and straight towards the shimmering portal. With a final, confused roar, the massive Ultra Beast tumbled through the wormhole, its bulk disappearing into the white void of Ultra space. The Kartana had already passed through moments before. Close it. Now, Ash yelled, staggering to his feet. Lily slammed her hand down on the console. The generator whined and shut down. The wormhole, already unstable, imploded with a silent, violent flash, leaving behind only the cold night air and the scarred, silent plateau. They had done it. In the aftermath, the international police were in disarray. Looker stared at the spot where the Guzzlord had vanished, his face pale. His protocols, his technology, his training, all had been utterly useless. Annabelle walked over to Ash, her professional demeanor firmly back in place, but her eyes told a different story. The report will state that a dimensional anomaly caused the Guzzlord to manifest, and Aether technology, assisted by IP crowd control, successfully repelled both beasts, she said, her voice quiet. And the giant, silent god of nothingness we just met? Ash asked wryly, wiping the blood from his lip. That does not go in the report, she said. A small, almost invisible smile touched her lips. That stays with us. She paused, her expression becoming deadly serious. Looker has been recalled. But I am exercising my authority as head of the task force. I'm staying. Aether Paradise is now the global epicenter of this threat. My place is here. Her hand brushed against his as she spoke, not by accident. A jolt, a current of shared energy, passed between them. It wasn't the fiery passion of a rival or the deep, historical affection he shared with Lily. It was something else. A profound, instinctual bond of shared perception. A quiet understanding between the only two people who had looked into the void and seen the thing that was looking back. From his hidden, state-of-the-art laboratory, Dr. Kalen Maddox watched the filtered sensor data from the Ula Ula incident. His face, usually a mask of arrogant intellect, was alight with manic glee. He had lost the Dratini egg, a minor setback. But what he had gained was infinitely more valuable. His long-range sensors, piggybacking on Aether's network, had captured it all. Incredible, he whispered, replaying the spectral analysis of the Guzzlord's corruption. They see it as a threat. A monster. They are fools. On a screen beside the data, schematics for a new kind of cybernetic implant were being drawn up. This one was different. It wasn't designed to augment a Pokemon's physical abilities. It was designed as a conduit. A receiver. They fight the void, Maddox said to the empty room, a wild, ambitious light in his eyes. They try to sever its connection. But I will welcome it. I will harness it. Why settle for perfecting one Pokemon when you can have a god as a power source? He laughed, a low, unsettling sound. Let the sentimental fools play with their bonds. I will create a true chimera. A being of flesh, technology, and the power of the void itself. Let's see your soul resonance stand against that, Ash Ketchum. On the ride back to Aether Paradise, the mood was somber. They had survived, but the nature of the enemy was now terrifyingly clear. They weren't just fighting a rogue science team. They were on the front lines of a war against a cosmic entity whose goal was the erasure of their entire way of life. Annabelle sat across from Ash, her gaze distant as she processed the vision they had shared. Cynthia was quietly reviewing tactical data with Lily, already planning contingencies for an enemy that could warp reality. The three women, each a powerhouse in her own right, were now inextricably linked to this island, to this cause. To him. Lily, the heart and founder, who had brought him here. Cynthia, the strategist and scholar, who had come to test him and found a purpose. And now Annabelle, the mystic and guardian, the only one who could truly share the burden of his perception. Ash looked out the window at the dark ocean, Pikachu asleep on his lap. He felt the weight of their trust, their belief in him. He felt the chilling memory of that cold, silent presence in the void. It had called him an anomaly. A flaw. A bug to be corrected. He placed a hand on Pikachu's head, feeling the warm, steady thrum of his friend's life force, the 20-year bond that was the bedrock of his entire existence. Let it come, he thought, a cold fire igniting in his chest. Let the god of nothingness come. We'll show it what a flaw can do. Chapter 4. The Fighting Spirit. The weeks following the Guzzlord incident settled into a tense, new normality. Annabelle's presence integrated seamlessly into the command structure of Aether Paradise. She became the island's silent watchtower, her empathic abilities a constant early warning system for dimensional friction. Cynthia, meanwhile, took a more hands-on role, not just as a strategist but as a trainer, working with the Aether security teams to elevate their skills from glorified zookeepers to a capable defensive force. Lily managed the ever-expanding logistical and political web, fielding inquiries from nervous world leaders and coordinating resource shipments with practiced, unshakable competence. They were a well-oiled machine, a four-person brain trust dedicated to protecting the world from a threat nobody else could see. But it was a machine running under immense, quiet pressure. The atmosphere in the command center was often thick with grim analysis and contingency planning. The weight of their shared secret was heavy. The disruption arrived on a Tuesday, not with the ominous hum of a void entity or the stealth of a chimera agent, but with the boisterous, unfiltered roar of a commercial speedboat skipping across the waves at frankly unsafe speeds. It screeched to a halt at the main dock, kicking up a colossal wake that drenched two unfortunate Aether employees. A figure leapt from the boat before it was even properly tied off, landing on the dock in a perfect crouch. She was a whirlwind of energy, clad in a sleeveless black top, white shorts, and her signature fingerless gloves. A pair of roller skates were slung over her shoulder, and her blonde hair was tied up in a wild, horn-like ponytail. Bouncing on the balls of her feet beside her was her own Lucario, radiating an aura of restless, kinetic energy that mirrored its trainers. Whoa, so this is the new Aether paradise. Karina, the Shallower City gym leader, exclaimed, her voice echoing across the tranquil harbor. Looks kinda fancy. Hope it's not all just for show. Ash, Lily, and Cynthia had come down to the dock to meet the unexpected, though officially cleared, visitor. Lily looked slightly aghast at the chaotic arrival. Cynthia watched with an amused, analytical curiosity. Ash just grinned. It was a nostalgic, invigorating sight. Karina, what are you doing in Alola? Ash called out as she bounded up the ramp towards them. What do you think I'm doing, Ash? She shot back, a huge, competitive grin on her face. She jabbed a thumb at herself. I heard the rumors that you'd hung up your gloves, settled down, and were playing nursemaid to a bunch of sad Pokemon. Then I heard other rumors. Crazier ones. That you'd tapped into some kind of power beyond Mega Evolution. That you're battling champions in secret and winning. She leaned in, her eyes sparkling with fiery intensity. I came to see for myself which story is true. And to get a battle, obviously. Her Lucario took a step forward, sizing up Ash's Pikachu, who straightened up on his shoulder, cheeks sparking a challenge. The air between the two Pokemon hummed with a friendly but intense rivalry. Lily stepped forward, attempting to inject a sense of order. Gym leader Karina, welcome. We're glad you could visit. But our work here is highly sensitive. It's a place of healing and research. Karina glanced around at the peaceful habitats, the calm Pokemon, the serene waterfalls. She scoffed, though not unkindly. Healing is great and all, Lily. But you can't heal a fighting spirit by wrapping it in cotton wool. True strength, the deepest bond, it isn't forged in a quiet room. It's forged in the fire. In the heart of battle, when you and your partner are pushed to the absolute limit and have to trust each other completely. That's what Mega Evolution is all about. She turned her fiery gaze back to Ash. This soul resonance thing I've been hearing about, it sounds passive. Tame. I'm here to see if it's got any real fight in it. Cynthia let out a soft, amused chuckle. I can assure you, it does. I have the data from a rather one-sided demonstration. Karina's eyes lit up. You fought him. The Sinnoh champion herself. And he won. Her grin widened. Okay. Now I'm really interested. The dynamic on the island shifted instantly. Karina was a force of nature, a jolt of pure, unadulterated battle energy injected into their carefully controlled environment. She found the quiet, meditative atmosphere of the sanctuary stifling. She saw Ash calming a traumatized Tauros and declared he should be helping it reclaim its spirit by sparring with it. Her direct, passionate, and often loud personality was a stark contrast to the other women. She and Lily were like fire and water, Karina's blunt enthusiasm constantly clashing with Lily's gentle, orderly approach. She and Cynthia engaged in spirited debates, the raw instinct of a battle prodigy against the cold, hard logic of a master strategist. She and Annabelle were the oddest pairing, Karina's loud energy a stark contrast to Annabelle's profound stillness, yet there was a mutual respect for their respective forms of power. But her focus, always, was Ash. She didn't challenge him to a single, formal battle like Cynthia had. Instead, she turned his life into a continuous series of spars and tests. Morning, Ash, she'd yell, intercepting him on his way to the Avian Rehabilitation Center. Bet my Holicha can get to the top of that waterfall before your Staraptor can. Loser buys lunch. The result was a breathtaking, impromptu race to the sky, a whirlwind of feathers and competitive cries that left the Aether staff watching in open-mouthed awe. Another time, she found him in the training arena, working with his Incineroar. His form is sloppy, she declared, vaulting over the railing. His darkest lariat is all brute force, no finesse. Let me show you how a real fighter moves. What followed was an intense hand-to-hand, and claw-to-claw, sparring session, Karina herself moving with the grace and power of a fighting-type Pokemon, her own Lucario coaching alongside her, correcting Incineroar's posture and footwork. Ash, far from being annoyed, was invigorated. Karina's fiery spirit was a welcome antidote to the grim, cosmic weight they were all under. Their rivalry was sharp and competitive, but it was also laced with a playful, flirtatious energy. Her challenges were a constant push, a reminder of the warrior that was still at his core. He found himself laughing more, his movements becoming sharper, his battle instincts honing themselves back to a razor's edge. You're letting her run wild, Lily said to him one evening, watching from a balcony as Karina and Ash's Pokemon engaged in a massive, chaotic, but good-natured brawl in one of the larger training fields. This is a sanctuary, not a fight club. They love it, Lily, Ash replied, a smile on his face. He gestured to the field, where a once timid Machoke was now gleefully arm wrestling Karina's Machamp. Look, they're not just fighting. They're expressing themselves, reclaiming their confidence. Karina's right, in her own way. Sometimes the best way to heal a fighter is to remind them how to fight. Lily sighed, but there was a smile tugging at her lips too. She couldn't deny the positive results. The Pokemon in the sanctuary were more active, more vibrant, since Karina's arrival. The culmination of Karina's campaign came a week later. She cornered Ash in the same private stadium where he had battled Cynthia. Her expression was different this time. The playful grin was gone, replaced by a look of serious, ultimate challenge. Her Lucario stood beside her, its posture radiating the same intensity. All right, Ash, no more games, no more races, she said, her voice firm. I've seen what you can do. I've felt your bond with your Pokemon. It's deep. Deeper than I thought. But I still believe the ultimate power, the true peak of a bond, is Mega Evolution. It's the trust a trainer places in their partner, giving them the power to transcend their limits. She raised her hand, showing him the keystone embedded in her glove. My Lucario and I have been to the peak. We've mastered the storm. Now I want you to show me what's on the other side of your calm ocean. She pointed at him. You and your Lucario versus me and mine. No holds barred. Show me your true power. Ash met her gaze. He saw no ego there, just a pure, honest desire to understand, to be pushed, to find the truth through combat. He nodded. You're on. The two trainers took their positions. Lily, Cynthia, and Annabelle watched from the observation booth, the air thick with anticipation. This was more than a battle, it was a clash of philosophies. Ready, Lucario? Karina asked, touching the keystone in her glove. Her Lucario barked in affirmation. Okay, let's go. Lucario, beyond evolution, Mega Evolve. She pressed the stone, and a torrent of multicolored light erupted from her glove, lancing across the field and enveloping her Pokemon. The energy swirled, and when it faded, Mega Lucario stood in its place. It was taller, sleeker, its fur marked with crimson patterns, black appendages flowing from its head like streamers of raw power. It let out a roar, and a shockwave of pure fighting aura washed across the stadium. The sheer, overwhelming power was staggering. Ash's Lucario braced itself, but it did not look intimidated. It looked to Ash, its crimson eyes asking a silent question. Ash didn't reach for a keystone or a Z-ring. He simply closed his eyes and took a deep, centering breath. We don't need to become a storm, Lucario, he said, his voice calm and clear. We just need to be who we are. Together. He extended his hand, palm open. His Lucario mirrored the gesture. The now familiar, brilliant blue of Ash's aura flared to life, but this time it was different. It didn't just surround him. It flowed from him in a visible stream, a river of pure energy that connected with his Lucario. Their two auras merged, not into a chaotic tempest of power like Mega Evolution, but into a perfect, shimmering, harmonic field that enveloped Lucario. Lucario's appearance didn't change. It didn't grow larger or sprout new appendages. But its presence was utterly transformed. The blue of its fur seemed deeper, the crimson of its eyes clearer. It didn't radiate explosive power, it radiated an almost impossible sense of balance and focus. Every muscle, every fiber of its being, was in perfect harmony with itself and with its trainer. Karina felt it through her own bond with Mega Lucario. It was stunning. The power pouring off her own Pokémon was a raging inferno. The energy coming from Ash's Lucario was like the unshakable heart of a star. Calm, contained, but possessing an intensity that was just as profound. Incredible, Cynthia breathed from the booth. Go. Close combat. Karina yelled, shaking off her awe. Mega Lucario became a blur, crossing the field in an instant, its fists and feet a phantom torrent of strikes aimed at Ash's Lucario. It was an attack that would shatter boulders. Ash's Lucario didn't try to block. It didn't try to match the speed. Guided by Ash's shared consciousness, it moved. It flowed. It became a river parting around a stone. Its movements were impossibly fluid, weaving between the flurry of strikes, not a single blow landing. It wasn't dodging. It was as if it knew where each attack would be a fraction of a second before it was launched, and simply wasn't there. It's not just predicting, Annabelle murmured, her eyes wide. They're sharing a single field of perception. Ash is seeing through Lucario's eyes and Lucario is acting on Ash's thoughts instantaneously. It's using my Lucario's own momentum against it. Karina realized with a gasp. Frustrated, she changed tactics. Back off and use Aura Sphere. Mega Lucario leapt back, creating a large, crackling sphere of destructive energy between its paws and launching it. Don't block it, Ash said quietly. Reshape it. His Lucario thrust its own paws forward. But instead of creating a shield or a counterattack, it projected a subtle, warped field of aura. The incoming aura sphere hit the field and, instead of exploding, its trajectory bent. It curved in a perfect arc through the air and slammed into the stadium wall far behind Ash's Lucario. Karina was breathless. This was impossible. This was a level of control she had never even conceived of. Her partner's power was a raging storm she guided. Ash's power was an extension of his own body, as precise and controlled as his own hand. One last try, she gritted out, her fighting spirit refusing to yield. Full power. Giga Impact. Mega Lucario roared, enveloping itself in a spiraling shroud of devastating energy. It became a living missile, the ultimate all-or-nothing attack, charging straight for Ash's Lucario. Ash didn't give a command. He simply looked at his partner, a shared, resolute understanding passing between them. His Lucario stood its ground. As the Giga Impact was about to hit, it thrust both paws forward. It met the cataclysmic attack not with equal force, but with a focused, concentrated pulse of their shared soul resonance. There was no explosion. For a heart-stopping moment, the two forces met, and the stadium was filled with a high-pitched, harmonic tone. Mega Lucario's Giga Impact, an attack of pure physical force, was being held at bay by a concept. The concept of a perfect, unbreakable bond. Then, with a final, resonant VMMMP, the energy of the Giga Impact was not reflected, but disassembled. It broke apart, dissipating into harmless motes of light that rained down like glittering dust. Mega Lucario was left standing, exhausted from the recoil, its Mega Evolution flickering and failing. It reverted back to its normal form, slumping to its knees, panting but unharmed. It looked up at its trainer with eyes full of confusion and awe. Ash's Lucario stood opposite, perfectly calm, not even breathing heavily. The blue aura around it gently faded. The stadium was silent. Karina stared, her mouth slightly open. The power she had dedicated her life to mastering, the ultimate bond she could forge, had been dismantled with almost casual grace. She looked at Ash, who was giving her a small, respectful smile. And then she started to laugh. It wasn't a laugh of defeat, but of joyous, wonderful revelation. Okay, she said, walking onto the field, her own Lucario trotting weakly to her side. Okay, I get it now. She looked from her exhausted partner to Ash's. That's what's next. That's the next peak. Suddenly, every screen in the stadium, every datapad, every monitor on Aether Paradise, flickered to life. The Aether Foundation logo was replaced by a sinister, stylized symbol, a three-headed dragon coiled around a DNA helix. A man's face appeared on the screen. He was handsome in a severe, clinical way, with sharp features, cold, intelligent eyes, and a pristine white lab coat. He stood in a gleaming, futuristic laboratory. Behind him, visible in a reinforced containment cell, was a monstrous shape. Greetings, to the esteemed members of the Aether Foundation, and to the world monarch, Ash Ketchum, the man said, his voice smooth, arrogant, and dripping with condescension. My name is Dr. Kalen Maddox. You may know me as the mind behind Project Chimera. Lily, Cynthia, and Annabelle went rigid in the observation booth. On the field, Ash's and Karina's expressions turned to stone. I have been monitoring your quaint little conservation project, Maddox continued, a mocking smile on his lips. Your sentimental approach to Pokemon potential. Healing trauma. Nurturing bonds. It is an inefficient, emotionally compromised methodology. True potential is not found. It is unlocked. Forcibly, if necessary. Perfection is not a matter of feeling, but of science. The camera behind him panned, revealing the creature in the containment cell. It was a Metagross, but one twisted into a horrifying parody of itself. Its metallic body was augmented with black, cybernetic limbs that twitched with unnatural energy. Wires and conduits snaked across its chassis, pulsing with a sickly light. And embedded in the center of the X, on its face, where its core intelligence resided, was a shard of black, crystalline material, a piece of the void itself, humming with that same empty, corrupting energy. You believe your bonds make you strong, Maddox sneered. I believe true strength comes from control. Absolute control. Over genetics, over evolution, and over powers you cannot even begin to comprehend. He gestured to the monstrosity. I present to you the Chimera Metagross. The perfect fusion of Pokemon biology, advanced technology, and a power source from beyond your dimension. It is the ultimate living weapon. A testament to a superior philosophy. His cold eyes found the camera, seeming to stare directly at Ash. I am broadcasting this message on all global frequencies. I challenge you, Ash Ketchum. Your soul resonance against my science. Prove to the world that your sentimental path is anything more than a comforting lie. Or concede that my vision for the future is the only one that matters. The broadcast cut out, replaced by the normal, peaceful Aether Foundation screensaver. But the peace was shattered. The entire world had just seen the challenge. They had just seen Maddox's creation. On the field, Karina stared at the blank screen, her earlier revelation forgotten, replaced by a surge of pure, combative fury. She looked at the twisted form of the Metagross she had seen, a perversion of a powerful and intelligent Pokemon, and her hands clenched into fists. She turned to Ash, who was watching the screen with a cold, quiet intensity. The time for games and friendly spars was over. This was real. This was a desecration. Her earlier rivalry, the desire to test herself against him, had transformed in an instant. It was no longer about her versus him. It was about them versus that. She stepped up beside him, her Lucario taking a place next to his. A united front. Okay, she said, a fierce, predatory grin spreading across her face. I get it now. That bond. She glanced at the effortless power his Lucario had just displayed. It's the ultimate weapon and the ultimate shield. Her hand found his for a brief, firm moment, a gesture of absolute solidarity and thrilling partnership. Let's go show that lab coat what real strength looks like. In the observation booth, Lily, Cynthia, and Annabelle watched them. The team was complete. The four pillars of the foundation, the four women drawn to his cause for their own reasons, now stood united with him against a common, monstrous foe. The heart, the strategist, the mystic, and now, the warrior. The challenge had been issued. And the answer was coming. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.